Notice I've added a little notch here, which helps when sharpening the blade, because it allows you to work right up to the edge of the stone and get the whole of the blade sharp and not damage the stone. The next thing we do is to harden the blade before we temper it. Now normally I'd use this forge that I made out of an old car wheel with 3 legs welded on it, which is air fed by an old interior blower motor out of a car, which obviously runs on the 12-volt battery that we used earlier. In the middle I've used some cotton canvas to make a tube. So instead of the forge that I made out of an old car wheel, I thought I'd try and make one in the ground. So I dug a hole, I took the grate out of my forge and put it in the hole that I'd dug, and to feed the air underneath, you might just be able to make out there's a piece of 1.5 inch square tube that I found laying around on the scrap heap, which then has my blower motor attached as before. So let's see how it goes. So now the exciting part. The hardening process is the reverse of the softening process. We heat the blade to 800 degrees, and in doing this we turn the carbon into carbide again. But if we leave it to cool slowly, it will return to being carbon. So we quench the blade. That is, we cool it very rapidly. This traps the carbon as carbide, which makes the steel hard, and we use oil to do the cooling. Right, we're ready, the fire's going. We've got our knife, we've got it in a pair of mole grips so that we can keep our hands well away from the heat. A pair of gloves going on in a minute. Now I use nasty old engine oil, partly because I like recycling and partly because it's cheap. Well, it's free, isn't it? When we put the blade into the oil, we must put it in vertically, because if we put it in diagonally, this side will cool first and shrink, and it may bend the blade. So when I put it into the oil, I must put it in like that. We'll get the end, the whole of the blade and part of the handle cherry red. It needs to be 800 degrees. Now, brilliant thing about nature is that it's always got a little indicator for you. And in this particular case, where metal gets to 800 degrees, it's no longer magnetic. So if we get a magnet and we try it on the blade, we see that it sticks. When this gets up to 800 degrees, this won't stick. So we know we're at the right temperature, and that's when we pull it out of the fire and plunge it into the oil and quench it. way it doesn't slip. Bit of a hot, messy game, and we've got a nice black blade now, but hopefully that should be hardened. So while we wait for the blade to cool down, as usual, we get the kettle on. But I don't think we'll use the blower this time. Right, my knife now is not looking very pretty, it's very black from the oil. So we're going to clean it up with a bit of 180 wet and dry. Right, I've cleaned the knife and I've run the blade over the oil stone again just to clean that up. This section we got red hot and quenched, so it's hard. This section didn't get red, although it got hot, it didn't get red hot, so this hasn't been hardened, this will still be soft. And what we want to do is bring the edge of the blade back to being just a little bit under the hardness that it is now, and we want the spine of the blade to be as soft as we can get it, so that we've got strength and flexibility in the spine of the blade, but we've got the perfect cutting edge. To do this, I'm going to use a gas blowtorch, and I'm going to apply the heat from the back so that the heat flows through, and just as it gets to the cutting edge, I'll watch the colours as they run, and when it gets to a straw colour we stop, quench it in some cold water just to stop that process, and then if I've done it right we should have a nice soft spine to the blade and the perfect cutting edge. Chosen a piece of elm for the handle, about 10mm thick or 3/8 of an inch. Right, we're ready to put the handle on. I've cut out the 2 pieces of wood for the handle. Next we need to sand them flat. The surface that goes against the steel wants to be perfectly flat, so it's a nice flush join. So to do this, on a flat surface, piece of paper, and flatten the 2 pieces off, obviously on the correct sides. Now the 2 meet up nice and neatly. Then we want to clamp on one side of the handle and drill it out. drilled that one side, we want to put the pin in. In this case I've used a piece of 6mm brass bar, which is easily obtainable from hardware stores. Cut to the right length and just pop it in. Just put 2 in for the moment. We'll go all the way through. And fit the second side. Drill out the next hole. Pull out one of the pins and drill through that one. And finally the last one. And that's the handle fitted. Now what we've got to do is finish the handle off by shaping it, which first thing we do is take the 2 pieces off. Now that they're lined up with the pins, take the wood off the metal, put the pins back in place, and then get these 2 surfaces to match up in this direction. So we get the handle back together like this with 2 of the pins in. Now we want to shape the front of the handle, this edge here, so that the 2 match when they're on the blade, and we don't have to work against the blade with sandpaper or any other cutting instruments. Well, I've got these 2 surfaces flat now. The next thing to do is to fit the handle onto the blade. To do that, obviously the rivets are going to hold it, but also I'm going to use some araldite, epoxy glue. Glue the whole thing together and then leave it for a while to set, and then start shaping the handle. We've finished roughing out on the belt sander, and now I've got some more shape with some rough paper by hand, which takes a bit of time, but it's quite an enjoyable job. I'm just finishing off with some smoother paper, and then we'll oil it with some vegetable oil to stop it being contaminated with dirt, keep it a bit cleaner. Then after that, all we need to do is clean up the blade, re-hone it, sharpen it up, and we're done. And here's the finished knife. A very basic knife and done in a very crude way, but effective, and a knife that will last a long time.